Have you ever wondered why some changes feel impossible to stick with,
Yeah.
while others just become second nature?
Right. They just sort of click.
Or how those seemingly tiny, maybe even insignificant daily actions could actually lead to truly remarkable, life-altering results over time.
It's fascinating when you think about it.
Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into exactly that.
Yeah.
The surprising, compounding power of tiny changes. Our insights come from a really powerful framework developed by a writer who transformed his own life after a significant injury, building this thriving online platform just through the consistent application of small, deliberate habits.
What a journey.
Yeah. So our mission in this deep dive is to unpack the fundamental principles of building genuinely effective habits. Everything from understanding how they form in your brain,
Right, the neuroscience bit.
to designing your environment for effortless success. We'll explore how shifting your focus from, say, ambitious goals to robust, repeatable systems can help you fulfill your potential just by making continuous small improvements.
It's a journey that really peels back the curtain on how human behavior actually works, doesn't it? And how, deceptively powerful consistency can be.
Okay, so we often think about making big, drastic changes to transform our lives, right? Like New Year's resolutions.
Exactly, the grand gesture.
But the core idea here is that something far more subtle is at play. Can you explain why these tiny changes are actually the ones that pack the most punch?
That's such a crucial point because it really goes against our intuition. We're kind of wired for the dramatic leap, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely.
But the surprising truth is that changes, even those that seem small and unimportant at first, they will compound into remarkable results if you're willing to stick with them for years.
Years, okay.
Yeah, the quality of your life often depends directly on the quality of your habits. I mean, with the same habits, you'll likely end up with the same results, right?
Makes sense.
But with better habits, truly anything is possible. It's often overlooked that this isn't about one giant leap, but it's a series of small, consistent steps.
That concept of starting small really resonates.
Yeah.
I mean, the author's personal journey going from a medically induced coma to an academic All-American,
Incredible.
and then building a successful business and writing a book, it wasn't a single defining moment, was it?
Not at all.
It was a gradual evolution, a long series of small wins and tiny breakthroughs. It makes you realize that, sometimes the only way to make progress is by embracing that notion of beginning small, no matter how insignificant it feels at the start.
And that's exactly why consistency, not intensity, is the key. It's really about building a rhythm,
Yeah. And when I was digging into this material, the story of British cycling under Sir Dave Brailsford really jumped out at me.
Oh, yeah, that's a fantastic example.
It's such a powerful illustration of this concept of marginal gains.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about what he did there and why it was so revolutionary?
It's truly a masterclass in this principle. So back in 2003, Sir Dave Brailsford was hired to completely transform British cycling.
Right.
His strategy was what he called the aggregation of marginal gains, which is basically the philosophy of searching for a tiny margin of improvement, just 1%.
Just 1%.
Just 1% in absolutely everything, and I mean everything.
Like what?
Well, they redesigned bike seats for optimal comfort. They rubbed alcohol on tires for better grip.
Wow.
They even painted the inside of the team truck white so they could spot dust easier for cleaner bikes, ensuring peak performance down to the tiniest detail.
It sounds almost obsessive, but what truly stands out about this is the astounding results.
Oh, absolutely.
Within just 5 years of Brailsford taking over, British riders won 57% of the road and track cycling medals at the 2008 Olympics.
57%.
And over a decade, I think of 2007 to 2017, they racked up an incredible 178 world championships, 66 Olympic or Paralympic gold medals, and set 5 world records.
Just staggering.
All from what seemed like tiny, almost unnoticeable improvements.
And the math behind that 1% improvement is truly eye-opening when you look at it. If you get just 1% better each day for 1 year, you'll end up nearly 37 times better by the end of it.
They're 37 times.
Yeah. But conversely, if you get 1% worse each day, you'll decline almost to 0. It just illustrates that what starts as a small win or, a minor setback accumulates into something much, much more substantial over time.
So it's really like compound interest, but for your self-improvement.
Exactly. That's a perfect analogy.
The effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them.
Yeah.
They seem to make little difference on any given day.
Right. You barely notice.
But the impact they deliver over months and years can be enormous.
Yeah.
It's only when you look back 2, 5, or maybe even 10 years later that the value of good habits and the cost of bad ones becomes strikingly apparent.
Mm-hmm.
It's like watching a tiny seed grow into a massive tree, almost imperceptibly day by day.
Exactly. The long game is where the magic truly happens. It's all about that compounding effect.
So, if that's the case, and tiny changes compound into massive results, does that mean our traditional focus on ambitious goals is actually, well, missing the point?
That's a really interesting question.
Because we often convince ourselves that massive success requires massive action, and we set these specific, actionable goals. But the source suggests your results might have very little to do with the goals you set, and nearly everything to do with the systems you follow.
That's a profound shift in perspective, isn't it? And it highlights some inherent problems with just focusing on goals.
Like what?
Well, for one, winners and losers often have the exact same goals.
Huh. Never thought of that.
Yeah, goal setting often suffers from what's called survivorship bias. We focus on the successful people who achieve their goals, but we ignore the countless others who had the same goals but failed.
Right.
And also, goals are really about temporary change often. Many people revert to their old habits after accomplishing a goal because, the purpose of setting goals is kind of to win the game. But the purpose of building systems is to continue playing the game indefinitely.
I really like that analogy of playing the game, but it makes me wonder, if we're so focused on the system, does that mean goals have no place at all? Or is it more about how we, prioritize them?
That's a fantastic question, and it's a common point of confusion. Goals definitely still serve a purpose. They give you direction, right? They point you somewhere.
Okay.
But if you fixate solely on the goal without a robust system to get you there, you're kind of setting yourself up for a potential fall. True long-term thinking is actually, you could call it goalless thinking in a sense.
Goalless thinking.
Yeah, in the sense that it's not about any single accomplishment. It's about the cycle of endless refinement and continuous improvement. Your commitment to the process, to the system itself, is what ultimately determines your progress.
So if you're having trouble changing your habits, it's not necessarily a personal failing then, is it? It's the system.
Precisely. That's such a key takeaway. If you're having trouble changing your habits, the problem isn't you. The problem is your system. Bad habits repeat themselves again and again, not because you don't want to change, but because you have the wrong system for change.
Mm-hmm.
And an atomic habit itself is really just a little habit that is part of a larger system. Just like atoms are the building blocks of molecules, these atomic habits are the building blocks of remarkable results.
So the core insight here is truly transformative. If you want better results, then forget about setting goals.
Yeah.
Focus on your system instead.
Mm-hmm.
You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. It's almost liberating, isn't it?
It really is.
Knowing that the perfection of the daily process, not the grand target, is what truly builds success.
Absolutely. It shifts your energy from the sometimes demoralizing chase of an outcome to the empowering control over your daily actions. It's about designing your environment for, inevitability, rather than relying on bursts of willpower for aspiration.
Let's delve into another profound concept from the source. Using identity as the North Star for habit change. Can you walk us through that nail-biting story? It's a great illustration of this idea.
Oh, the nail-biting one. Yeah, it really is. So consider the story of a man who had chewed his fingernails for, as long as he could remember.
Okay.
One day, he resolved to stop and, through sheer willpower, managed to let them grow out a bit. Then he did something kind of surprising. He asked his wife to schedule his first ever manicure.
A manicure? Why?
Well, he thought if he paid to maintain his nails, he wouldn't chew them. And it worked, but maybe not for the reason he expected.
How so?
The manicure made his fingers look really nice for the first time. The manicurist even said something like, other than the chewing, you had really healthy, attractive nails.
Yeah.
Suddenly, he felt proud of his fingernails.
Well.
He never chewed them again because caring for his nails became part of his identity. He started seeing himself differently.
That's fascinating. So the manicure didn't just change his nails, it changed how he saw himself. This highlights a crucial point. The biggest barrier to positive change is often identity conflict. Good habits might make rational sense, but if they conflict with your self-image, you will often fail to put them into action.
Mm-hmm.
So progress, in this sense, requires unlearning and continuously editing your beliefs to upgrade and expand your identity. It's about becoming, not just doing.
It truly is a two-way street. Your habits shape your identity, and your identity shapes your habits. The most practical way to change who you are is to literally change what you do.
How does that work?
Well, each time you write a page, you are casting a vote for being a writer. Each time you practice the violin, you are casting a vote for being a musician. Each time you start a workout, you're casting a vote for being an athlete.
Okay, so you're building evidence for that new identity.
Exactly. And this process not only gets results, but it also teaches you to trust yourself, building the belief that you can actually accomplish these things. When the votes for a new identity start mounting up and the evidence begins to change, the story you tell yourself starts to change as well.
It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy then.
In a way, yes. So the real reason habits matter so much is that identity change is the North Star of habit change. The true question isn't what or how initially, but who do you want to become? You need to know that first.
Absolutely. It's about starting with the end in mind, the person you aspire to be. So the identity piece gives us the who, but what about the mechanics, the actual how of building habits?
Right, the practical steps.
Our understanding of how habits form stems all the way back to psychologist Edward Thorndike's 1898 puzzle box experiments with cats. That sounds old.
It is, but foundational. He observed that behaviors followed by satisfying consequences tend to be repeated. How does this basic observation translate into the framework for understanding habit formation today?
Yeah, how do we get from cats in boxes to, checking our phones constantly?
Well, that simple observation laid the groundwork for pretty much everything we know about habit formation. Your brain builds habits because a habit is essentially just a behavior repeated enough times to become automatic.
To save energy.
Exactly. The process begins with trial and error. The first time you encounter a new problem, your brain isn't sure how to solve it. Like Thorndike's cat, you're just trying things out to see what works. But once you stumble across a solution, a reward, your brain learns the most effective course of action, and eventually it automates the process.
Okay, and so all habits, good or bad, follow these 4 stages in the same order. Cue, craving, response, and reward.
That's the loop.
This 4-step pattern is the backbone of every single habit. So the cue is that trigger that initiates a behavior. It's a bit of information that predicts a reward. Think of your phone buzzing with a text.
Or the smell of coffee brewing.
Or, the smell of a donut shop. It's that flicker of interest, the internal prompt.
Then comes the craving, which is the motivational force behind every habit. And importantly, it's the desire for a change in state, not necessarily the habit itself.
What do you mean?
Well, you don't crave smoking a cigarette per se, you crave the feeling of relief it provides. You're not motivated by brushing your teeth itself, but by the feeling of a clean mouth. It's the anticipation of the outcome.
Got it. And the response is the actual habit you perform. Grabbing your phone, biting your nails, drinking coffee, buying that donut.
Yep, the action.
And finally, the reward. This satisfies the craving and teaches your brain which actions are worth remembering in the future, effectively closing that feedback loop.
So crucially, if a behavior is insufficient in any of these 4 stages, it simply will not become a habit. You need all 4 working together in a seamless cycle for that true automation to kick in.
And that understanding gives us the blueprint for the 4 laws of behavior change. Let's start with the first law. Make it obvious. What does that mean in practice, and why is awareness such a critical starting point?
It means we need to bring our habits into the light, basically, because your brain is continuously analyzing your surroundings, learning to notice important cues over time, often without you even consciously thinking about it.
Right, it's automatic.
Exactly. This makes habits incredibly useful, but also kind of dangerous, because actions can become automatic before you even realize what's happening. Many cues that spark our daily habits become so common they're essentially invisible, like the treats on the kitchen counter or your phone perpetually in your pocket.
Guilty.
We all are. Because of this, we really need to begin any behavior change with awareness, making the invisible visible.
So how do we do that? How do we make the invisible visible? I remember reading about pointing and calling in the Japanese railway system. It sounds so simple.
It is, but incredibly effective. Japanese train operators literally point at objects, signals, speedometers, and call out their status aloud. Signal is green.
They actually say it out loud.
Yes, it's a verbal and physical check. This simple technique raises awareness from a non-conscious habit to a more conscious level. And the results: it's been shown to reduce errors by up to 85% and cut accidents by 30%.
Wow.
Even the New York City MTA saw a huge drop, 57%, in incorrectly berthed subways after adopting a modified version. It just forces you to notice.
And for our everyday lives, the habits scorecard sounds like a pretty low-friction way to start doing this.
Absolutely. It's super simple. Just make a list of your daily habits, wake up, check phone, brush teeth, make coffee, etc. Then just rate them with a plus, minus, or equal sign.
Based on good or bad?
Not quite. Instead of labeling them good or bad, which can be judgmental, ask yourself, does this behavior help me become the type of person I wish to be? Does this habit cast a vote for or against my desired identity?
Linking back to identity.
Exactly. The goal initially is simply to observe your thoughts and actions without judgment, just to get a baseline awareness.
Okay, so once we're aware, how do we then design our physical spaces to support the habits we want to build? Because the source says behavior is truly a function of the person and their environment. B equals FPG.
It's powerful, isn't it? That idea that our environment shapes us so much. Most people just live in a world others created for them, but you can be the architect of your own environment. Well, a great example is the Massachusetts General Hospital cafeteria experiment. A physician team there wanted to improve eating habits without relying on willpower.
So what did they do?
They simply altered the choice architecture. They added bottled water to refrigerators that only contained soda before. They put baskets of water near the food stations. And what happened?
Water sales went up?
Skyrocketed, while soda sales plummeted. They didn't lecture anyone. They just made the healthy choice the easy, obvious choice.
That's brilliant in its simplicity. So to apply this ourselves, we should make cues for our good habits as prominent as possible.
Precisely.
Place your pill bottle right by the faucet if you want to remember your vitamins. Keep your guitar in the living room, not hidden in a closet. Put stationery on your desk if you want to write more letters. Fill water bottles and place them around the house.
Exactly. The more prominent the cue, the more likely you are to think about it and then actually perform the desired habit. It's about setting yourself up for success by making the cue impossible to miss.
And it's not just about what you explicitly see or hear. The environment itself, the subtle context of where you are, plays this enormous, often hidden role too, right?
Oh, absolutely. This idea of context can truly be the invisible hand guiding your habits. Think about insomniacs. They're often advised to associate their bed solely with sleeping. No reading, no watching TV in bed.
Why?
Because it strengthens the association, the context. Bed equals sleep. That helps them fall asleep faster. It's also why it's often easier to change habits in a new environment.
Really? Like going on vacation?
Sort of, yeah. Or moving house, or even just changing rooms to work in. You escape those subtle, ingrained triggers from your old environment. There's a striking example with Vietnam War soldiers who became addicted to heroin overseas.
Okay.
A surprisingly high number spontaneously quit once they returned home to a completely different environment, away from the cues and stresses associated with the war.
Wow. So simply resisting temptation is an ineffective long-term strategy then.
Yeah.
Pretty much. You become a product of the environment you live in. The source really hammers this home, stating, I have never seen someone consistently stick to positive habits in a negative environment.
That's a stark but powerful reminder.
Which leads us neatly to the inversion of the first law. To break a bad habit, make it invisible, reduce your exposure to the cue, remove its cues from your environment altogether if you can, out of sight, truly out of mind.
Okay, moving on to the second law. Make it attractive. Our world seems almost engineered to make us crave certain things, doesn't it? Like those hyper-palatable foods.
Oh, definitely. The modern food industry has become expert at this. They've literally engineered products to be more attractive to our brains, finding the bliss point. That precise combination of salt, sugar, and fat that excites your brain like nothing else.
Why does that work so well?
Well, it exploits our old Paleolithic instincts. Our ancestors craved calorie-dense foods because they were scarce and essential for survival. But now, in our environment of abundance, that same craving leads directly to overeating.
And it's driven by dopamine, right? That anticipation chemical.
Exactly. And what truly stands out is how deeply our brains are wired for anticipation. Every highly habit-forming behavior, taking drugs, eating junk food, playing video games, browsing social media, is associated with higher levels of dopamine release.
And it's not just when you get the reward.
Critically, no. Dopamine is released not just when you experience pleasure, but also, crucially, when you anticipate it.
Yeah.
It's much more about wanting or craving than it is about liking the pleasure itself.
Can you give an example?
Sure. In one study, Mice were given dopamine hits whenever they poked their nose in a box. They ended up doing it 800 times per hour.
Wow.
And think about the average slot machine player. They spin the wheel about 600 times per hour. Our brains are just hardwired to chase that anticipation, that potential reward.
That's wild. And social influence also plays a massive role here, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Belonging is such a deep human desire.
Huge. We tend to imitate the habits of three main social groups. The close, like our family and friends. The many, meaning the tried or broader community norms.
Right.
And the powerful, those people with status and prestige that we look up to.
Can you give an example of that?
Think of the Polgar sisters, the chess prodigies.
Oh, right.
They practiced chess intensely for many hours daily from a young age. Part of what maintained the attractiveness of that hard work was that their family culture deeply valued it. Success led to praise, status, recognition, making the effort feel worthwhile.
And we also see this in conformity to social norms, like in those famous Asch experiments.
Exactly. Solomon Asch's conformity experiments showed how people would literally agree with a clearly incorrect group answer about the length of lines simply because they desired to fit in.
Just to not stand out.
Precisely. As the source states, the normal behavior of the tribe often overpowers the desired behavior of the individual. So, one of the most effective things you can do to build better habits is to join a culture where your desired behavior is the normal behavior.
Surround yourself with people already doing what you want to do.
Yes, and ideally, find a group where you already have something in common. Your environment then becomes this source of powerful, positive peer pressure.
And it's not just external forces, is it?
Yes, sir.
You can also reframe your own mindset to make hard habits seem more attractive.
Absolutely. You can learn to associate them with a positive experience, often through just a slight shift in perspective.
Like how?
Well, a simple trick is changing "you have to" into "you get to."
Okay.
So instead of groaning, I have to wake up early for work, you reframe it as, I get to wake up early for work, or I get to make another sales call for my business. It reframes it as an opportunity, not a burden.
Interesting. And for exercise.
You could reframe it from a draining task to a way to build endurance and get fast, or a way to reduce stress. Saving money can be associated with future freedom and possibilities rather than immediate sacrifice. It's all about how you frame the narrative in your head.
Okay. And the inversion. How do you make a bad habit unattractive?
You reframe your mindset to highlight the benefits of avoiding it. Alan Carr's famous method for helping smokers quit is a prime example. He systematically reframed all the cues associated with smoking.
What did he say?
He challenged the smoker's beliefs, like, you think you are quitting something valuable, but you're not quitting anything because cigarettes actually do nothing positive for you. Or you think smoking relieves stress. No, it doesn't. Smoking doesn't relieve your nerves. It destroys them. It fundamentally changes the association from positive to negative.
Powerful stuff. Okay, let's move on to the third law. Make it easy. I think this is where many of us get stuck, right? We spend so much time trying to find the optimal plan.
Oh yeah, analysis paralysis.
The fastest way to lose weight, the best program to build muscle without ever actually taking action. There's a distinct difference between motion and action, isn't there?
Absolutely. Motion is things like planning, strategizing, learning. Those are all good things, necessary even, but they don't produce results on their own.
Yeah.
Action is the behavior that delivers an outcome.
So when does motion become a problem?
When preparation becomes a form of procrastination, when you're endlessly researching but never doing, you don't want to merely be planning, you want to be practicing. You need to take action.
And the brain actually helps make things easier with repetition, right? Like those London taxi drivers.
Exactly. It's amazing. Their hippocampus, the brain region involved in spatial memory, is significantly larger than average. It's living proof that when you repeat a behavior over and over, your brain literally rewires itself to make it more efficient, more automatic. Just as the English philosopher George H. Lewis noted way back in 1860.
What did he say?
Something like, no sooner has frequent repetition cut a pathway than this difficulty vanishes. The actions become so automatic. Practice literally carves pathways in your brain.
So we instinctively follow the law of least effort. We naturally gravitate toward the option requiring the least amount of work.
We do. It's human nature. It's why scrolling on our phones, checking email constantly, or binge-watching TV consumes so much time they require almost zero physical or mental effort. They are remarkably convenient.
So the key is reducing friction for good habits.
Precisely. Think about Japanese electronics firms in the 1970s and their lean production methods. They relentlessly removed waste, even redesigning workspaces so workers didn't have to waste time or emotion reaching for tools.
And that made them more efficient.
Massively more efficient and reliable. The easier something is to do, the more likely you are to actually do it consistently.
And you can also prime your environment for future use, like that IT developer, Oswald Knuckles, who had a strategy of resetting the room.
Yeah, that's a great little technique. After watching TV, he'd put the remote back, arrange the pillows neatly, fold the blanket. Why? Because it makes the start of the next action watching TV again, or maybe even doing something else slightly easier. It removes those tiny points of friction that can make us pause or choose the easier path.
It sets the stage for future success in a small way.
And these seemingly small habits, these tiny choices, can have an outsized impact. Habits can often be completed in just a few seconds, but they can impact your behavior for minutes or hours afterward.
How so?
These are what the author calls decisive moments. Choices that are like a fork in the road. Choosing to put on your running shoes versus grabbing the remote. Kicking up an apple versus a cookie. These little choices stack up, and they really set the trajectory for how you spend your time.
That brings us perfectly to the 2-minute rule. Can you explain that?
Sure. It's simple. When you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do.
Less than 2 minutes. That sounds too easy.
That's the point. The idea is to make your habits as easy as possible to start. So read before bed each night becomes read 1 page, do 30 minutes of yoga becomes take out my yoga mat, run 3 miles becomes tie my running shoes.
Okay, so it's like a gateway habit.
Exactly. It just gets you over that initial hump, that initial resistance. It naturally leads you down a more productive path. The point isn't just to do that one tiny thing. It's to master the habit of showing up.
Standardize before you optimize.
Precisely. You have to make showing up the standard automatic part. Ritualizing the beginning of a process, just taking out the mat, just tying the shoes, makes it so much easier to slip into the state of deep focus or into the activity itself. It builds the consistent entry point.
And technology can be a powerful ally here too, right? Making things easy.
Oh, for sure. Technology can transform difficult, annoying, complicated actions into easy, painless, simple behaviors.
Wow.
Sometimes for good, sometimes not so good.
Like Netflix or YouTube auto-playing the next episode.
Exactly. That reduces the effort needed to continue binge watching down to zero. It makes the easy choice even easier.
But you can use automation for good habits too.
Absolutely. Setting up automatic bill payments, using apps that pre-portion meals, things like that. The author even experimented with having his assistant reset his social media passwords every Monday and only give them back on Friday. Yeah. It logged him out on all devices. He found he worked without distraction all week, got the passwords for the weekend, and actually adapted really quickly. He discovered he didn't need to check it as often and found motivation for more meaningful tasks. It's a clever way to make the bad habit difficult by adding friction.
Which brings us directly to the inversion of the third law. To break a bad habit, make it difficult. That password reset strategy is a perfect example. Add friction, make it inconvenient.
Spot on.
Okay, finally, the fourth law. Make it satisfying. This seems tricky because our brains are wired for immediate gratification, right?
They really are. We evolved in what you could call immediate return environments. Our Paleolithic ancestors hunted or gathered, and the reward food shelter was usually pretty quick.
But modern life isn't like that.
Mostly not, no. Modern society is largely a delayed return environment. You work hard today for a paycheck weeks later. You exercise today for health benefits months or years down the line. This inherent delay makes it much harder to stick to habits where the reward isn't immediate. Our brains just aren't naturally built for it.
So how do we bridge that gap? How do we make habits with delayed rewards feel good now?
You need to inject some immediate pleasure or satisfaction into the process. Make the habit itself enjoyable, or link it to an immediate reward.
Like the Safeguard soap example in Pakistan.
That's a brilliant case study. A public health researcher, Stephen Luby, was trying to improve hand washing rates to reduce disease. Just telling people it was important didn't work well.
So what did work?
They provided soap that was actually pleasurable. To use it foamed easily, it smelled great. Suddenly, hand washing wasn't just a chore, it felt good.
And did it stick?
Amazingly well. Even years after the free soap was no longer provided, over 95% of households kept up the habit. It led to significant reductions in rates of diarrhea, pneumonia, and skin infections. The immediate sensory satisfaction made all the difference.
So it's like Wrigley gum or flavored toothpaste.
Exactly. They became popular not necessarily because they were vastly more effective at cleaning, but because they created that immediate fresh mouth feeling. They provided instant sensory gratification, which made the habit stick.
And habit tracking offers another way to get that satisfaction, doesn't it? That visual proof of progress.
Yes, absolutely. I love the story of Trent Dursmid, the young stockbroker.
For the paper clips.
Yeah. He started with 2 jars on his desk, one full of 120 paper clips, the other empty. For every sales call he made, he moved 1 clip from the full jar to the empty one.
Simple but effective.
Very. It gave him immediate visual proof of his progress throughout the day. That visual cue is motivating. It makes you want to keep the streak going, and the simple act of moving the clip itself can feel satisfying.
So the benefits are clear.
Yeah.
You get visual proof of your hard work. It motivates you not to break the chain. And the act of tracking itself can be surprisingly satisfying.
Definitely. But there's a really important caveat here, something known as Goodhart's law.
What's that?
It basically states, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. Meaning, if you get too obsessed with hitting numbers, say, making 100 sales calls just to move 100 paper clips, you might lose sight of the quality or the true purpose behind the habit. Are they good sales calls? Is that the real goal? Measurement is useful to guide you, but it shouldn't consume you.
That's such a crucial distinction. Not everything important can be neatly quantified.
Exactly. Don't let the tracking become the sole focus.
And finally, under making it satisfying, there's the idea of an accountability partner, or even a habit contract.
Right. Just like governments use laws and fines to hold citizens accountable for undesirable behaviors, you can create your own system. A habit contract is basically a verbal or written agreement where you state your commitment to a habit and the punishment if you fail.
And you get someone else involved.
Ideally, yes. You sign it, and you have 1 or more accountability partners sign it with you. It makes the commitment public and adds social consequences.
Like the entrepreneur Brian Harris with his weight loss contract.
Yeah, that was intense. He created a detailed contract with his wife and his personal trainer. It outlined specific daily habits, lugging his food, weighing himself, and really painful consequences if he failed.
Painful like what?
Things like having to dress up in fancy clothes every day for work for a whole week, including Sundays. Having to wear an Alabama hat his rival team for the rest of the quarter. Even financial penalties paid to his trainer if he missed weight goals.
Ouch.
Signing that contract indicated he was truly serious. The immediate cost of failure makes sticking to the habit much more satisfying in comparison.
Which is the inversion of the 4th law. To break a bad habit, make it unsatisfying, create an immediate cost for inaction, or for doing the bad habit, it flips the script.
Precisely. It adds friction and negative consequences to the undesired behavior, making the good habit relatively more appealing.
Okay, so we've covered the 4 laws. But beyond these, optimizing for long-term success also involves understanding things like your unique talents and maybe even genetic influences, right?
Yeah, that's an important layer. We see it clearly when we compare elite athletes. Think Michael Phelps in swimming versus Hicham El Guerrouj in running.
Very different body types.
Totally different physiques. Both reach the absolute pinnacle of their respective sports. It highlights that while genes don't predetermine your destiny, they can certainly influence your inclinations and aptitudes. Things like your tolerance for stress, your tendency towards addiction, even personality traits like agreeableness or neuroticism have genetic components.
So genes clarify what might come easier.
Exactly. They can clarify what to work hard on. It's about finding your game, the area where your natural inclinations align with the demands of the task.
Why is that important?
Because you're inherently more likely to enjoy tasks that come a bit more easily to you. Enjoyment leads to practice. Practice leads to competence. Competence leads to praise and better opportunities, which fuels more enjoyment. It becomes a virtuous cycle of success.
So focus on fulfilling your own potential rather than constantly comparing yourself to others who might be playing a different game entirely.
That's the key. Don't try to be Michael Phelps if you're built like Hicham El Guerrouj or vice versa. Play the game that fits you.
And once you find that game, you need to find your Goldilocks zone. What's that about?
The Goldilocks rule. What's truly fascinating here is that research shows humans experience peak motivation when working on tasks that are right on the edge of their current abilities.
Not too easy, not too hard.
Exactly. Roughly 4% beyond your current skill level seems to be the sweet spot. If it's too easy, you get bored. If it's too hard, you get frustrated and discouraged. That Goldilocks zone keeps you engaged, challenged just enough, and facilitates growth.
But staying in that zone long-term can be tough. The source identifies boredom as the greatest threat to success, not failure. Why boredom?
Because as habits become routine, as they become automatic, which is the goal, remember, they naturally become less interesting and less satisfying. The novelty wears off.
And that's when motivation dips.
Precisely. Anyone can work hard when they feel motivated and excited, but the ability to keep going, to keep showing up when the work isn't exciting anymore, that makes the difference. As the author puts it, professionals stick to the schedule. Amateurs let life get in the way. You have to fall in love with the boredom, in a sense.
That's a tough ask. Fall in love with boredom.
It is, but it's about embracing the process, even when it's mundane. It's almost a test of true commitment to the system.
Which leads us nicely to the continuous cycle of improvement, the need for reflection and review. Because even automatic habits aren't always perfect, right?
Exactly. While habits bring fluency, speed, and efficiency, there's a potential downside to automaticity. As things become automatic, you can become less sensitive to feedback. Mistakes can slide by unnoticed. You might just keep reinforcing your current habits rather than actively improving them.
So you plateau.
You can, yes. For truly elite performance or even just continuous growth, you need a combination of those automatic habits plus periods of deliberate practice and reflection.
So how do we build in those reflection and review systems? I recall reading about Pat Riley, the legendary NBA coach, and his Career Best Effort CBE program.
Yeah, that's a great example. Riley didn't just focus on stats. He asked his Lakers players for a consistent 1% improvement in their overall effort, spiritual, mental, and physical. He tracked this improvement meticulously.
And it worked.
Famously. This relentless focus on small, continuous improvements, tracked and reviewed, helped the team win back-to-back NBA championships. It created a system for ensuring their habits improved rather than declined over the season.
And it's not just in sports, right? Comedian Chris Rock does something similar.
Absolutely. When preparing new material, he apparently tests hundreds, maybe thousands, of jokes in small comedy clubs first. He uses a notepad to record meticulously what works, what doesn't, where the laughs are, what needs adjustment. He's constantly refining based on feedback.
And some executives use decision journals.
Yes, some executives and investors keep journals where they record major decisions they make, the reasoning behind them, and what they expect the outcome to be. Then later, they review those decisions to learn from both successes and mistakes. It forces self-assessment.
And the author himself shares some personal rituals.
He does. He mentions doing an annual review where he asks himself 3 questions. What went well this year? What didn't go so well? And what did I learn?
Simple but powerful.
And also a semi-annual integrity report where he revisits his core values and honestly assesses how well he's living in alignment with them, considering how he can set a higher standard for himself.
So these deliberate periods of reflection are crucial then. They prevent that gradual slide into complacency.
Exactly. They provide a necessary check-in, a reminder to revisit your desired identity and evaluate how your current habits are actually serving that identity. Are you becoming the person you wish to be? It keeps everything aligned and moving forward.
It truly is a cycle.
It really is. We've journeyed through this subtle yet incredibly powerful world of atomic habits, haven't we? Understanding how these tiny changes, when combined with well-designed systems, identity alignment, and those 4 laws make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying, can profoundly transform your life over time.
Yeah, it's really not about the grand gestures, is it? It's about the compounding effect of consistent, small improvements, building systems that ultimately lead you toward becoming the type of person you wish to be. And as we close out this deep dive, maybe a final thought for you, the listener. Happiness is often described, maybe unsatisfyingly, as the absence of desire, that fleeting state you enter when you no longer want to change your state. But, a new desire always seems to come along, pointing us toward growth.
Always something new on the horizon.
So, considering that pleasure often follows after an action, not necessarily before it, what single small habit could you introduce or refine today? Something that casts a vote for your desired identity, setting you on that path of ongoing growth and satisfaction. What stands out to you from this deep dive that you feel you could apply right now?